Hi, everyone. It's me again, and I am back for day 8 update on the Trezell and Jacqueline West trial. These are the adoptive parents of Orrin and Orson West, who are formerly known as Classic and Sincere Pettis. And as you will probably recognize their little faces here to the left of my avatar, they were precious little souls. So, today was only a half a day. They stopped at noon. So there's probably not going to be as much for me to go over, and my notes are a little bit all over the place. So bear with me. Thomas is a special agent for the Secret Service, and the DA has him up on the stand, and they're asking about digital forensics. He mentions bypassing encryptions, and Smith asked him to explain what that meant. And Thomas said that sometimes they can bypass pins or passcodes on phones to retrieve the data. Thomas went into describing the state of the phones that he received when they were placed into his hands, and he was able to extract a little bit of data from each device. He said he created a reader report based off of the data, and the reader report is used by the investigators to see what information was gathered. He was also able to extract email addresses from the phone. Then Tara Stalling got up and she began her cross on Thomas, and she asked him if he was providing the pattern for the phones. Thomas said he had the PIN code for one of the phones. Thomas said he was unable to unlock the first phone without the code. He said his tools enable them to bypass the PIN code to gather data from the phone. And I guess that was a pretty quick assessment because she did not say much else. Nasser did his cross, and Nasser is the one that's helping Hennessy with Trezell's portion of the defense. He just asked some more questions about the extraction, and he said they usually put the phones on airplane mode during the extraction so they aren't connected to any networks. Okay, this is kind of boring. So that's all of that witness. Then they brought up Special Agent Scott Medlin for the FBI, and he actually was testifying via Zoom. He's a digital forensics examiner. The DA asked Medlin about receiving evidence from Bakersfield, and the items included several thumb drives, laptops, a hard drive, cell phones, tablets, a camera SD flash card, and several micro SD cards. Medlin said he attempted to extract the data from these items. He said some of the extraction was successful and some was not. Then he goes on to explain how he does it, how he just extracts everything. The phone that he couldn't get the information from was severely damaged, and that's why he couldn't get anything from it. Another phone was locked with a PIN code, and he was not able to bypass the code. One of the hard drives would not power on, so he was unable to extract that data. He was able to extract data from 2 out of the 3 micro SD cards, and he copied that to the server. Then Torres Stallings kind of goes over the timeline of his examination, and then he was excused from the stand. They then called up Officer Antonio hang on, Orozco, Orozco. He's from the Bakersfield Police Department, and he's a detective. At the time of the investigation, he was a patrol and traffic officer for BPD. And during this time, he was asked to download surveillance video from a camera off of Truxton Avenue and H Street. The date of the video was December 19th, and he was pointing out what was in the video. He said you can see the Strata Credit Union parking lot and the sidewalk next to the Bakersfield Police Department headquarters. There was an issue trying to play the video, so they had excused him due to this. They're still having issues with videos. The next witness they called to the stand was Philip West, and Philip West is the father of Trezell. The DA asked Philip about different jobs that Trezell had. He asked if Trezell ever worked in loss prevention, Phillips said yes. The DA asked if December 2020, if Philip said he was living at the home on Potomac Avenue with his wife and youngest son, Josiah, and he asked if in the early parts of 2020, Trezell and Jacqueline were living in the Casa Loma apartments, and he said yes. He asked about Trezell and Jacqueline's biological children, and Philip became very teary-eyed on the stand speaking about the kids. See, I'm telling you, Trezell's family really love these babies. The DA asked him about March of 2020 during the early parts of the pandemic. Smith asked how much contact they had with the couple during that time, and he said occasional contact. Phillips said he found out from his wife about the couple buying a home in Cal City. He said he wasn't involved in the move, but his wife helped. Phillips said after they moved, he never had a chance to visit. And then they asked him, well, did you have plans to visit? And he said yes, he was planning to go visit soon. Phillips said they might have discussed going to visit around Christmas, but I guess they didn't. Smith asked about the other 4 boys being dropped off at their home the weekend of December 19th, 2020, and Phillips said he remembers, though he wasn't involved too much in watching the kids, it was mainly his wife. Which kind of contradicts. Well, no, that doesn't contradict, because on the 19th, that was not when Josiah was helping as much. Okay. So Smith asked if Philip contacted Trezell after officers told him about Orrin and Orson, and he said no. He said after CPS spoke with the other boys, they were taken from the home. Phillips said after they took classes, they were allowed to have regular visits with the other boys. He said this was his after a few weeks at a facility in Shafter. The visits could only last between 2 to 3 hours long. He said Trezell and Jacqueline were present during several of the visits. Oh, I didn't know that. The visitation lasted around 4 months. Now the DA goes back to March of 2020 when the pandemic was started, and he asked Philip if he ever saw Orrin or Orson after COVID began. Philip was unsure. He asked him if he ever told officers the last time they were all together may have been July of 2020. He confirmed. Philip said he may have. Philip says after they moved to Cal City, he never saw Orrin or Orson. Phillips was explaining how he had a cane shop where he makes canes from wood and metal, and Smith shows a picture of the wooden item that is duct taped. He asked Philip, "Is this if this was his?" And no, that ain't my work, Philip said. And then Hennessy got up to cross-examine him, and they were asking about locking it down quickly after COVID. And Philip said yes, because of his age as well as his wife's health. They didn't get out much. Philip said that a lot of times when his wife was watching the boys, he was working in his cane shop. He said usually when the boys would come over, they'd be more interested in playing games and playing with the dog. And then Hennessy clarified that he was speaking of before COVID. Hennessy asks if Philip and Trezell were less close after he married Jacqueline. Philip said he doesn't recall this. Philip said they would butt heads sometimes. He said, I raised them to be fathers. I know what it takes. Hennessy asked if Philip ever taught Trezell woodworking and how to make canes. He said no. Philip said Trezell was creative and he probably picked that up from him. Then Hennessy asked if the officers who came to their house told them the Cal City home looked like a compound, and Philip said yes. He said he hadn't given it much thought at first because he just figured it was because they had just moved in. I find it interesting that the defense keeps bringing that portion up and not the prosecutor. Philip said that he may not have wanted to realize the reality of what was coming. He says he's still mind-boggled. It's a lot because it doesn't reflect the Trezell you raised, Hennessy asked. He said no. Gosh, again, that sounds like something you'd get out of the prosecutor. Okay, then they took a break and they brought Ryan back up. Detective John Ryan. He's the one that's been doing the interview with Jacqueline. And they brought up the remaining portion of the video of her interview with all of them. In the recording, Officer Brian Hansen is pleading with Jacqueline, saying he knows she did something and he knows she knows something. Jacqueline just continues to say that the boys were at the house the previous day. Then Hansen tells Jacqueline that the courts will not trust her with other kids now that the boys are missing, and Jacqueline said they had nothing to do with the disappearance. Same thing they were saying yesterday. They're just keep going over the same thing, I guess. Hansen says he's just trying to help her. Jacqueline says he can help by finding the boys. Ooh. Jacqueline says it feels fake, like she's going to wake up. Hansen tells her it's okay. She didn't do anything wrong. Hansen left the room. After a few minutes, Ryan enters the room. Now, Ryan's the one that's been going hard at her, and he tells her he wants to find these kids more than she does. Ryan says he thinks Jacqueline's a great person who's just in a bad spot right now. He tells her he can see she has a lot on her shoulders now that she wants to tell him. They really think that she was going to break. Then he continues to ask Jacqueline about where the babies are and what happened to them. Jacqueline continues to say she and Trezell didn't do anything to the boys. In the recording, Ryan said when talking to Trezell, his demeanor was relaxed until he mentioned the other children, saying they haven't seen the boys. Ryan said that's when he got mad. Ryan said their stories just aren't adding up. And in the recording, Ryan doesn't believe that Jacqueline's 10-year-old son would say he hadn't seen the boys in months if it wasn't true. Ryan says he believes something bad happened. One of them panicked, and now they're covering up for each other. He says when it comes out, they'll be disowned by all their friends and family. He says eventually she and Trezell will turn on one another. Ryan says now it's her opportunity and he wants to help her, and Jacqueline doesn't say anything to him. Ryan says that when he interviews innocent people who think they did something, those people flip out. He said their demeanor is different than Jacqueline's. Oh, Jacqueline says she's thinking if there's anything else, and Ryan says the truth. That's all they want. In the recording, Jacqueline says there's nothing. Ryan finishes questioning her and asks if she'd like his card. Jacqueline says yes. He leaves the room. Then Trezell comes in. Smith asks Ryan about going. Okay, so now the DA is asking the detective on the stand about going to another home on Aspen Avenue, and Ryan says that the home had surveillance cameras pointing towards the east side of the west home. Now, remember, everyone, the east side is where they were saying that gate was left open. Ryan says they asked for permission to look at the footage from a day before the boys were reported missing. He said they were looking for any evidence of the boys at the house. He said they looked at the footage from the day the West drove the 4 boys to their grandmother's. He said at the time they were leaving, he only saw Trezell, Jacqueline, and the 4 boys walking from the house. Now, if you've been following this case at all or watched any of the media on it, that we kind of already knew was something that was being said, was that they never saw the Orrin and Orson getting into the car. Ryan said they seized the video and took it to the Bakersfield Police Department to be booked into evidence. He said it took a few days for the digital forensics teams to download the footage. He then returned the belongings to the owner. The timestamps had the correct date, but the timestamp was approximately 57 minutes behind. So he also testified that he contacted a homeowner on Rome Beauty Drive. They seized their DVR player with the recordings of their surveillance cameras. They downloaded videos from that system and then they booked them into BPD, Bakersfield Police Department. Ryan said they spent around 6 days on and off in Cal City investigating there. And then they rested for the day. And court will resume again on Monday at 9 a.m. Let me see if I missed anything. Oh, Judge Brenner told him, he's like, you guys got to get this fixed. So the last few minutes of the recording will be played on Monday. Ryan did tell Jacqueline in that interview, he said, do you want this on your shoulders for the rest of your life? He says, I can tell it's bothering you. There's nothing, she said. He said, you can't lie forever. Your stories don't match. There is no story. She says, well, that's messed up right there, Jacqueline said when Ryan tells her she's going to lose everything, her children, her friends, her family, house, everything. And she just sits there and she keeps shaking her head. He said, if we find out foul play was involved, this is going to go to court. He asked if she thinks any jury is going to believe her. He says they'll look at the evidence, how she was treated here, and all the opportunities she had to tell the truth. She did say in that interview that one of her phones was broken, and she said she had thrown it in the trash, didn't save the SIM card. He said, well, you've had your new phone for over a month, and there's no new photos of the boys. There's no photos of the boys on it. He said he thinks the boys have been missing for so long that she's past the remorse stage, the crying stage. He said, someone's going to find out. No one can cover their tracks that well. Then Ryan tells her that the video surveillance capturing nothing, he says. I think they're inside somewhere, Jacqueline says. Ryan asks who would take them. She says, it could be anyone. She said, I have no idea where they are, where they could be. Then he flat out asked her, he said, did you kill those boys? She said, no. Did your husband kill those boys? No. Ryan said, do you want the whole world to think you're a bad person and a terrible mom? Jacqueline says, people think that already. Oh, Ryan tells her, he said, like, this case is going to go national, then worldwide, and everyone will know her and her husband's names. She did make a comment about, she's like, where they've been digging and whatnot. It looks like graves in the backyard. And then Ryan said, well, are they buried out there? And she says, I didn't bury them there. The officer then told her that Trezell's parents and brother broke down and were losing it when told the boys were missing. He tells her to give him something. Jacqueline West says she left them in the backyard. Yeah, they do say that they replayed some of this yesterday. I think that's pretty much it. I just wanted to see if we missed anything about what the dad had said. Oh, listen to this. Philip West said they're always together on Christmas, but on December 19th, 2020, he said all of the children except Orrin and Orson were dropped off at his home. So that kind of tells you right there they knew, because some people were speculating where they had to give it up. They had to do something to say the boys were gone because they knew Christmas was coming up and people would start asking questions. So that just kind of confirms it, that they did see, even though they were kind of weird about all going to visit and spend time together, they did spend Christmas together. Oh, this reporter wrote that when asked to name the West's biological children, Philip West did so, then said, don't do this to me. And his voice broke. And the judge told him to take a minute. So that original video that they were trying to pull up, I guess I want to say that they were trying to pinpoint if Jacqueline and Trezell went where they said they went that day on December 19th. But I guess they'll have to do that on Monday. That's pretty much it. It was a half a day, so I'm just sad about his dad. I'm telling you, I just feel like that Trezell's family is just heartbroken, and I don't think it's the language barrier. I really feel like Jacqueline's mother is kind of stone cold about some of this stuff, and she's the whole one that got them into fostering kids in the first place. So it I don't know. It's almost like they treat kids like some people would treat, getting a dog or a cat, if that makes any sense. But who am I to judge? I'm just some chick with a microphone and a YouTube channel, right? So anyway, that should be it for this. You guys have a blessed weekend, and I'll be back on Monday with the latest update for Monday's trial with Jacqueline and Trezell West. Be good, everyone.